and go.
Should I start talking about? Should I start
Hold on,
talking about
before we
Gravel
start?
Guest first.
Yeah. Let's get our guests introduced
Dude.
here. And before we even do that, I'm gonna apologize to you guys and the listeners. I have this weird thing going on with my tongue called lie bumps. So if I'm talking with a lisp at all, it's because my tongue like literally burns like crazy. Yeah, it's weird. I had an allergic reaction to an anti-inflammatory medicine that I was taking last week, so not cool. But hey, so we've got a guest of the show today, Carson Beckett, pro mountain biker, just got back from Swiss Epic, which we'll hear all about. Carson, you want to tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks, man. Happy to be on. I currently residing in Brevard, North Carolina, like Dylan. Was a couple years under him, but went to Brevard College. Similar like kind of degree path and everything, and in the coaching, cycling combo world. And I just no better place to be and stuck around here in Brevard, North Carolina. So I'm helping run my race program, Dirt Camp Racing, which has got a couple little things going on, a little Devo action going on with that, and racing bikes and living in North Carolina. So
yeah, dude, this is like the college reunion here.
Sweet
Scott,
race.
Carson, and I all went to college together. So, yeah. Also, it seems like every other pro racer is also a cycling coach, huh?
Yeah, it was a big theme there.
Hey, Carson, I rode with one of your teammates at Leadville for quite a while.
Eli?
Oh, cool.
I didn't get his name. I just know that he was wearing the Dirt Camp jersey.
He
had longer hair.
Okay, that was probably Thor. We had
Thor.
Eli
Yeah, that sounds
Francis
right.
And Thor. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, he was fun.
Cool. Yeah, he's a cool guy. He's like marketing director or something for Storyteller Overland. So they a big sponsor. They can do like all the Mercedes chassis van conversions, basically.
Whoa.
Sick.
Okay. Sweet. All right, so I know Dylan's dying to tell us about some stuff that went down at Gravel Worlds.
I'm dying to hear about it.
All right, let's start there, Dylan.
Yeah, well, it's just I think that everybody learned from SBT that if they make, if they stir up a bunch of drama, particularly Pete, probably, right? If they stir up a bunch of drama about these gravel races, it seems like it kind of bit them in the ass. At least it did Pete, right? Like he even admitted that he was wrong in that Velo News article, and it's like he was like, yeah, they just figured out, they figured out a different tactic that I didn't think about. So I guess what's interesting about Gravel Worlds is Adam Roberge is the men's winner, and the way in which he won is I read John Bolsterman, who's been the two-time defending champion, got second this year. What he said was that Adam skipped the last aid station, and he and John stayed back to fill up water, and basically like John lost the race by 14 seconds, like probably roughly the amount of time that it took him to fill up his bottles, maybe even a little bit less time than it took him to fill up his bottles. And he said like the last 18 miles, he had Adam in his sights, but he couldn't catch him. Basically, I don't know how the race would have played out had they just came in for a sprint finish, which is what happened last year. Adam's a good sprinter, but John's also seems to be a good sprinter as well. I don't know how it would have played out, but the race was won because Adam skipped an aid station.
Now, was he like pissed about this?
So
it's hard to like explaining what's going on.
So it's hard to tell what his real feelings are, because he certainly didn't make it seem like he was pissed in his post about it, right? And I think he probably just like saw what Pete did the week before, and was like, oh, I don't want people getting upset at me on social media because I'm I'm trying to keep the rules of gravel the way they are, and people seem to like the way Keegan did it better. So didn't seem like he was pissed about it on social media, but I guess the question now is like, is the spirit of gravel fully dead at this point? Now that people are just like skipping aid stations is like completely a cool thing to do.
So, all right. So Carson and Dylan, I don't know, Scott, this might not apply to you as much from the road side, but for mountain biking, like, isn't one of the things that you always do before the start of a race is figure out your nutrition plan? Like, how many bottles you're going to start with? Are you going to run a pack or not? How many gels you're going to put in your pocket? Where are you going to stop? If you're going to stop, like, all that stuff goes through your mind, right? It's not just like a given, like, hey, we're going to stop at this aid, this aid, this aid. Like, as mountain bikers, like, that's just what we do, right? So I don't know, like, is maybe the spirit of gravel just kind of changing? Like, it's evolving. It's turning into more mountain biking or something. I mean, I think that's like a baller move to, like, if you can stay away for 20 miles after skipping the last aid station. I don't know if maybe Adam didn't need to stop, but if it was like a split second decision, like, hey, do I stop? Do I not stop? Like, if he wasn't sure and he just decided to blow through it in order to get a gap, like, I think that's pretty badass.
Well, did he he didn't tell him that he's stopping, right?
I don't know what the communication was.
Like, shouldn't you guys how many guys were in the group? A couple? Two?
Well,
three?
I think there was at least 3, because I think it was at least Adam, John, and Pete Stetna. I could be wrong about that, but
And the tandem.
Yeah, the tandem got third. The tandem got third, by the way. Apparently, they're like the road world championships road world champions for tandem. Got third at Gravel Worlds.
Holy shit, that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, to me, so like it comes down to there's like an A and a B plan. Like, if A option is you have the ability to have team support, then you run light, you go low profile, and like you have your team out there to support you. If not, if it's the B plan, which is no team support, it's, race provided only, then you are like, okay, well, you have to weigh the options. Then at that point, it's like, I can run light, stop at aids, or run a little heavier, and I've got everything I need and I'm good. So it's like,
yeah,
I don't know why there's so much beef around that. To me, is like, you've got two situations, so you just you got to pick one.
I mean, say you're coming up to the feed, you should be looking at the other guys' like water bottles and see how full they are, and like reach over, like feel how heavy his camelback is or whatever to see if he's gonna stop, or just like ask him like, hey, you gonna stop? If he lied to him and said, yeah, I'm stopping, and then blew through, I mean, then you can have some beef. But if you didn't ask him, then you got nothing wrong. Like, he didn't do anything wrong.
Sure.
Yeah, and to your point, like, if he can stay away for the last 20 miles, like kind of running on E, then like kudos to that guy. I mean, you run the risk. It's like, I'm not going to stop, and hopefully I don't blow up. Then like,
Roberge posted that he was more roasted after that race than like any race he'd ever done. So like he was like completely emptied by the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it could have gone the other way where he just like completely blew up.
Right. Now if John would have won because Roberge blew up with 3 miles to go because he didn't have anything left in his bottles, would he have like felt bad for Adam? Like, no, of course not. Like, that was a risk that Adam took.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I feel like, so endurance mountain bike racing has been going on for way longer than gravel. And you have to, occasionally you have to stop at aid stations in endurance mountain bike racing, just like you do in gravel racing. And I feel like there's never been this sort of beef. And I don't necessarily know why that is. Maybe because there's more pack dynamics in gravel racing versus.
Yeah, I'm sure that's part of it. Like in mountain biking, it's usually thinned out pretty good that you don't really often know what your competitors are doing or how quickly they're going through aid stations and stuff. Whereas like, in this case, and like going back to SPT last week, like there was a big front or big chase group that all came together, and then like clearly it split at the aid station. So like that's probably part of it, but I don't know. I think it's just like a converging of different backgrounds. in the road, you've always had, support teams in the feed zones who are like giving you bottle hand-ups, or you've had teammates who are bringing you bottles and things like that. So like in road racing, a lot of times it doesn't come down to like, a race of attrition and like who has enough supplies to get them through the race. And then you've got mountain biking, which a lot of times, like, someone like Keegan, who's done the white rim FKT, which is like 100% self-supported, like he's kind of used to doing that. So you've kind of got these two different backgrounds converging, and gravel's just always been this like sort of wild, wild west, like anything goes. And now I think guys are just getting outsmarted, like in there's like a lot more tactics involved now. And I think people are just a little bit jaded from that.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, for some reason, I have to talk about aero bars every single time we have this podcast, but aero bars are legal at Gravel Worlds, and both Adam Roberge and John didn't use aero bars. Both of them are guys who have used aero bars in the past. I almost commented on John's post, like, I know something that could have gotten you 14 seconds. But I didn't do that.
So Dylan, I went back and just now reread his post. So he actually had caught Adam 2 miles after the aid station, but he missed a turn.
Okay.
So he must have been like on Adam's wheel, he must have been on the front and then missed a turn, but Adam caught it or something. And then it says that he went out 20 seconds or got a 20-second gap there and then went and stayed away for the last 18 miles. So there was the aid station dilemma and a missed turn there.
Dude, that's like double anti-spirit of gravel by Adam. Like not waiting at the aid station and then not waiting when your competitor misses a turn.
I'm reading the post. I don't think he cares about the aid station.
Yeah, it didn't sound like he cared
about the turn.
Yeah, sure. Dude, I mean, Adam hasn't cared about the spirit of gravel from day one. Like, he was breaking the spirit of gravel rules from his first gravel race.
So he's basically just been trying to win bike races the whole time.
Sure.
Yeah, so Dylan, so as far as like the route following or whatever, do you know, is like Gravel Worlds one of the races where they don't mark any parts of the course and you have to run it on your GPS?
Yeah, I mean, more and more gravel races are going that direction, so it wouldn't surprise me if Gravel Worlds is one of those. I honestly don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, the guy who puts on Gravel Worlds is a super nice guy. I've met him. Like, he's offered to put me up if I ever want to come to the race and all of that. It looks like a cool event. I want to do it. It's just always at such like a busy time of the year. There's so many other races to do.
Well, what were you doing last weekend?
What do you mean?
Why didn't you do it?
I was recovering from Leadville.
Yeah. A week later. Didn't Adam do Leadville and he won it?
Sure,
and he did Steamboat.
And he did Steamboat, and he had such a bad day.
Making you look like such a bitch right now.
Dude, but that's the thing. Like, the first half of the season, I totally, like, that. If this was the first half of the season, I would have been like, oh, yeah, let me go do Gravel Worlds. And that's, like, totally what bit me in the ass. Like, I just raced way too much, and, like, my results suffered.
It's not in the spirit of gravel. You should be racing all the time.
Is that part of the spirit of gravel?
Maybe you get better at racing all the time if you just raced all the time.
Dude, I think the spirit of gravel is just you have to wait at the aid station until everybody has their bottle completely full
and grab their snacks.
And then wait an extra 30 seconds if anyone just like wants to catch their breath, and then you can continue.
And then you got to take a bunch of pictures drinking an IPA and then dump it out in the bathroom.
Yeah, right, exactly. Dude, what do you... So I was going to say, like, Gravel Worlds looks like a super cool event, and it's put on really well, but what do you guys think of the name Gravel Worlds? Is that not a little bit, like, self-serving?
Well, they probably came up with it before, like, this was a thing.
They did,
right?
Yeah, for sure.
So he's like, I'll just start. I mean, who claims the world championships of any event? Somebody just got to start it, right?
Yeah, I mean, very true, very true. And it could have caught on and actually been like a huge, huge world event. But I would argue that at this point, I mean, he's not even pulling the fastest riders in the U.S. to his event.
He should change the name to what is it in Nebraska or something?
Yeah.
You should change it to Gravel Worlds of Nebraska or something like that.
Gravel
makes it left,
Sure. So they know it's a joke, it's tongue in cheek.
So I think this is from what I've heard. I think the name actually comes from a spin-off of the Wednesday Worlds group ride.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's kind of just collectively getting all the local fast guys together and doing a race. So I don't think it ever meant to be the World Championships.
Sure. Yeah, I can respect that for sure.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, if the UCI does get involved pretty soon. I feel like we could be looking at some actual worlds, some actual World Cups or something funky.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about this on an earlier podcast, how the UCI gravel races that have been in the US this year hardly anyone has even attended them.
Yeah.
It's US gravel
one
racers
was canceled because there wasn't going to be enough attendance.
Yeah. I mean, they're so uninterested in anything having to do with the UCI. Which I don't know. There's good and bad to that.
Yeah, but I think that part of that is the rebellious nature of American cycling versus internationally. I don't know. Maybe their international events will do better. I haven't kept track of it, but which if they do, eventually, a lot of our participants are going to gravitate towards their events.
Yeah,
but if it's a bust altogether, then it's just a bust.
Yeah. Before we move on from Gravel Worlds, I just wanted to say Lauren DeCrescenzo won Gravel Worlds, and I think at this point it'd probably be safe to say that Lauren DeCrescenzo is the female version of Keegan as far as her dominance. I mean, it's like any gravel race that she shows up to, you'd be foolish not to put your money on her if you were betting.
Is she not part of the Grand Prix? The Lifetime Grand Prix.
So she's not part of the Grand. So this is the way that she's not like Keegan, right? She's like Keegan in her dominance. She's not like Keegan in her mountain bike skills or lack thereof. She didn't want to be part of the Grand Prix because she doesn't want to do mountain bike races. And I think that if there's anything that's an Achilles heel for her in gravel racing, it's her technical skills. Yeah.
Yeah. Which, I don't know. I would like to see her in it, but it's kind of cool that she's not in a way. But also, it's come on, the mountain bike race. She was here in Brevard training one time when we rode together, and she is insanely fit. You can just tell she just rides differently. And we were talking about that, and it's well, I get that, but the mountain bike races, you could do them on a gravel bike.
Yeah, they're
not that demanding.
They're super tame. I mean, all three of them are if you wanted to, you could do them on a gravel bike. I don't know if that would be the fastest bike, but it's it wouldn't even necessarily be an issue if you had to do the entire series on one bike.
For sure. Which would be, I mean, I would like to either see a wider variety of races in the future as a spectator. I would like to see either more technical races become involved, or something like that where they make it they standardize it a bit. You have the choice of one frame that you can
for the whole season. Now, what if you crack your frame though?
You got to get the exact one.
Okay.
God, take that shit back together.
You can't spectate these races anymore.
Which it'll be interesting now to see, because you guys have one coming up that's fairly different from the rest. The Shaquamagon or whatever, however you say that one. I would say that one's probably the outlier of the season to me.
How so?
Like distance and demand. Like it's
Sure.
what is it, like a 40-mile point to point?
Yeah, winning.
So
I was looking at the winning race times. They're like 2 hours and 10 minutes, 2 hours and 15 minutes.
yeah. So that'll be
Yeah,
kind of interesting.
On a dry year, I think Payson went 2:01.
Wow.
I don't know if 2 hours has ever been broken, but
So that's like 20 miles an hour.
yeah.
Yeah. I ordered a 38 tooth chain ring, so I heard that
Big
you
dog.
need it. You need it for that course.
Dude, so if that's a point to point, that sounds like such a pain in the ass. 40 miles, then you're 40 miles away from your car.
Yeah, well, you only race for 2 hours. You need to get in like 3 more hours of riding in order to even call it a ride.
Yeah. Everyone will flip it.
The last day of Portugal was a point to point time trial, and it was like 5K was the start and the finish, and it was like still kind of a pain in the ass. Like you had to like figure out logistics and shit, and this is 40 miles.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's 40 miles of like meandering terrain though, so I think it's only like 10 or 12 miles from the start to finish.
I'm
Do you
just
have to
gonna
ride?
Well, you just park your car at the finish and then just ride for your warm up back to the start.
I'll probably do the opposite. I'll probably ride an extra 2 hours after the race just to get in a little bit of volume back to my car.
Or that.
Or we're both going to be there. We could have one
Yeah.
car at the start, one car at the finish.
Yeah.
Might show up for that one. We'll see.
Dang.
Sure, hell yeah.
Yeah, man.
What does that
win.
mean? I'm starting in the back though? Is it lifetime
I
front?
don't know.
No, there's like a 3-mile neutral rollout on the pavement.
Oh.
That's like it's like not neutral enough that you can like move your way up through the group.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, we'll definitely be talking more about that race, but I think we got to talk about it's a bad week for dopers. Specifically talking about Nairo Quintana got popped and Mateus Flukinger got popped.
Flukinger.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a brother. But I guess I was a little bit surprised at Nairo just because his results haven't been there for a while. So I don't know. It's not like he's getting some crazy results out of nowhere, and you're like, oh, that looks suspicious. Mateus, I was kind of like, that makes a little bit more sense because he's been a top 10 guy almost his entire career, and then in his 30s he starts winning World Cups. I don't know. What did you guys think about that?
What do you go pause for? Matthias.
Oh, I'm gonna have
Anybody
to look
know?
it up.
It was.
I'm gonna have to look it up.
I have it right here. Zeranol or Zeranol. It's Villeneuve says it's widely used to accelerate growth in livestock. It's on the water prohibited list, and it's considered an anabolic agent. So, not looking very good for him.
And do you know if it was out of competition or in competition? The test.
Good question.
It said that
I know it was back in June.
Yeah.
Back to the Swiss Championships in June is when the discovery was.
Huh.
From the sample. And yeah, that's hard. Like, I feel like there's definitely some tricky stuff out there, but that's one thing with mountain biking. I've always kind of held out hope that like a lot of these guys seem to be pretty natural, and it's been pretty untainted for a long time, it seems, but I guess we're discovering that it's not. And it's kind of a bummer just from a mountain biker side of things, because that was kind of like always some of my pride about this side of the sport. And yeah, I mean, he's been like vice champion to Nino so much, so it's got to be.
Sure.
I don't want to draw lines, but like that's got to be hard on him.
Yeah, I guess it does. I agree with you. It seemed like it was less prevalent in mountain biking. I don't know necessarily what the reason for that was. But again, it's just like when somebody makes a sudden breakthrough when they're in their 30s, it's got to be a red flag. In my, like, if you're making breakthroughs in fitness, it's probably in your early to mid 20s, not in your 30s.
Yeah, it's just a big bummer when the only time mountain biking makes headlines in ESPN is when someone gets popped for doping.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, it just sucks for our sport.
And it's hard too because now you just can't you can't backdate and you can't trust any previous results or whatever. Like, it's kind of just
right.
There's an unknown question mark basically over all of his career now, which sucks. But I mean, that's what you accept once you step into that.
Yeah. Same with a couple months ago. Who's that cyclocross guy that got popped?
Tuna Ertz.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Same thing. I guess it raises the question. I'd be interested to see what you guys think on this. How prevalent do you think in 2022 doping is in pro cycling? Because a lot of people have different opinions on this. Some people are like, oh, they're all doping. They're just finding different ways of hiding it, or, they're ahead of the curve. They're ahead of testing, whatever. And some people are like, it's a totally different sport than it was in the late 90s and early 2000s.
In Portugal, there was a team who'd won the race the previous 5 years. I don't know if I said this last week or not, but they couldn't start because only 3 of their riders weren't suspended.
Wow.
But none of them went positive. They got raided by the police, and they had they were caught with, they said, medications, which I don't know exactly what that means, but
yeah.
So in Portugal, it seems like it's still a thing, but I think it's, I don't know, it seems like it's isolated to certain areas from my experience.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's a blend of both. I think it is out there, but I also think that it's some of these teams are probably just finding kind of advanced ways to improve performance before they're really decided to be, I guess, banned or natural.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's like with tramadol, like what Nairo went pause for. It wasn't banned until 2020 or 2019, and it was that. From what I've heard, it was huge in the Peloton, but it makes you super drowsy. It's a painkiller, but it makes you drowsy. So then, people thought that was causing crashes because people were basically falling asleep while they were riding, or they're just hammering the caffeine and pumping the tramadol.
Did someone else talk, or did someone else get popped for that this summer? Because I remember you telling us about that, I don't know, a couple months ago.
I don't remember. Maybe.
So it is banned now, though.
It's banned, but for some reason he doesn't. There's some reason he doesn't have a suspension. He could have started the Vuelta, but he decided not to start because of the controversy. But so his results are what do you call it? Removed from the Tour de France.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not banned. He can compete.
Yeah.
Which is kind of weird. I don't know why. I forget the reasoning, the wording of the rule for tramadol. But, yeah. And I think it was you have to get blood samples for tramadol. You can't test it in your piss.
I mean, what do you guys think it would take to just to get banned substances completely eliminated from pro cycling? Would it take a no tolerance policy? You get popped for anything, you're out? Or is that too harsh?
Yeah, I think it would have to, the no tolerance policy, it would have to depend on how strong the evidence is. You would have to definitely be sure that they took something knowingly banned, right?
Sure.
And then I'll be honest, I'm totally on board with no tolerance. You can't race again if the evidence is strong.
Yeah. You wouldn't want it to be someone, ate a batch of yogurt that had some, weird antibiotics in it from the cow, and they got popped because of that. Like when I raced in China for cyclocross a couple years ago, none of the Euros would eat the meats there because they were afraid of what chemicals might have been in the food or something. Which we didn't care. We were like, it's not whatever. We got chemicals in our food back home too, but they were like superstitious about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly harder to dope now than it was in the late 90s, early 2000s because of the biological passport. But I've heard people theorize about how you could potentially get around the biological passport. One theory is that, and this is also a theory as to why so many young riders are dominating the sport right now, is that, the biological passport is looking at your blood markers over the course of a season. And there's people suggesting that if you started doping from a young age, and I want to preface this, I'm not any sort of doping expert. This is just like conspiracy theories that I've heard. If you start doping from a young age and you maybe like microdose EPO like your entire career, you could get past the biological passport. There's also people suggesting that these teams are constantly doing these altitude camps, and the science for whether or not high altitude training is actually beneficial for sea level performance is mixed at best. And I would say it's not very strong evidence. And an altitude camp is not cheap. And basically, or easy, it's like, it's a huge logistical nightmare and all of this. And what they're saying is that when you go to altitude, you can record that on your biological passport, and then when your blood markers change, you say that's because I was at altitude, but it could be because you were on something, and that's like another way that they're potentially getting around this. Like I said, I'm not any sort of doping expert. To be honest, I haven't even looked into doping that much because I don't plan on doping. So could be talking out of my ass right now, but that's just some of the theories that I've heard about how teams could be potentially getting around this.
Huh.
Yeah, it's interesting, what when you see an athlete like Tom Pidcock, for example, it's like you've got some of those characters that are head and shoulders above others and that can cross disciplines and just like dominate. And it's like, you hope that they are natural. Or I guess clean, I guess I would say.
Sure.
I mean, I'm sure everybody at that level, they've got such high level doctors and team staff that are, trying to basically get every little percent out of them you can, but it's like, it's just tough. Like you want to hope that we're seeing just a great generation and not like some behind the scenes trickery. So
yeah.
The problem is somebody has to be the bbest, right? So the best is always accused, but like somebody's got to be the best.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. So you just mentioned Tom Pidcock, and I mean, there's like Vanderpool, Wout van Aert, these names, like they're dominating, and they're dominating in multiple disciplines, and what they're doing is super impressive, and it almost seems superhuman at times. I'll be honest, what raises and I'm not saying that those guys are clean or dirty or anything, but I would say that what raises more red flags to me is when there's somebody who goes from mid-pack to winning, and I'm sort of referring to like Flukinger. Like he wasn't mid-pack, but you see what I'm saying? Like he was a top 10 guy, and all of a sudden he wins the World Cup overall, and he's in his 30s, and you're like, where did that come from? I think that raises more red flags when somebody has some sort of like breakthrough late in their career.
Yeah, especially in a discipline like cross country mountain biking. It'd be different if he like switched over to endurance mountain biking, but Yeah, I mean, to still have that firepower at 33, 34.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So should we move on from doping?
Sure. You guys want to add anything to the doping discussion?
Doping sucks. Don't do it, kids.
Right. What I have up next is that Dan Bigham broke the hour record, and I don't know if anyone else on this podcast cares about that because none of us are
Didn't
track
even know
cyclists.
that happened.
Exactly. That's what I'm gonna say. Is that I knew it happened, but when like whenever there's been an hour record, it seems like it's been in the news a lot more than it has this time.
Yeah, I don't know.
Even when Dowsett went for it, it was like a month of like articles leading up to it, and like he didn't even get it.
I think Dowsett's a little bit better at press. Like he's got a YouTube channel and everything, and I think he's got he's got a bigger following. I'm not a track cyclist. None of us are track cyclists, but I will say this is the kind of thing that I love to see in bike racing. And I explained this to Jeremiah Bishop when we were talking about aero bars, because Jeremiah Bishop is like the OG for using aero bars for off-road events, whether they be mountain bike events or I don't know. When gravel came along, he switched his stance and now he's anti-aero bar. And we had a discussion about that. You can go and listen to it. But what I told him is and this relates to aero bars, but it also relates to these sort of records being broken, or just anytime somebody wins a bike race in an unconventional way. I love seeing when somebody who's not most of the time in bike racing, the strongest person wins the race. That's what happens most of the time. And that's fine. I like to see the strongest person win. That's cool to see. But every once in a while, it's not the strongest person who wins, it's the smartest person. It's the person that outsmarted the rest of their competition. And it only happens every once in a while. And when it happens, I get so excited. That's what I love to see. Like, perfect example is when, and we've argued about whether this was because of the dropper post or not, but when Mohoric won Milan San Remo with the dropper post, like he's thinking outside the box. He's outsmarting his competition. Dan Bigham, and I don't think he would mind me saying this, is not at the caliber of like Campenerts or Alex Dowsett or any of these top time trial like world tour guys. He doesn't put out the same amount of power. Like, I was listening to a podcast where he was talking about, for this hour record, like he's talking about putting out 340 or 350 watts. There's amateurs that can do that. So how was he able to break the hour record? It's because he's so damn geeky about aerodynamics that he figured out how to go that fast, putting out that little amount of power. And I freaking love that. But so cool to me.
How did he do that? I mean, what were his tricks?
He's more aerodynamic. I mean, his tricks is endless. Like, from the helmet, the skin suit, the bike, the chain, the tires, like everything. There's nothing he doesn't think about. He thought about it all. And he made his equipment as fast as it could possibly be. And he made his position as fast as it could possibly be. And he probably did like 350 or 360 watts for an hour, which is totally something that an amateur could do, like a very high level amateur. And he has covered more distance in the hour than anyone ever has. And that's awesome.
Did he do any like special like mobility stuff to like get his position even better, more fine tuned, or anything that you know of?
I'm sure he did loads of shit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what he does specifically to get into that super aerodynamic position, but it's not just about having, being super low. It's also about like getting your shoulders super narrow. So like the entire hour, he's like hunching his shoulders Because the difference between having your shoulders wide and your shoulders narrow in an hour record could be, I don't know, 10 watts, 15 watts. Right. So he's like on his limit for the entire hour, and he's hunching his shoulders for the entire hour. Yeah, I don't know.
And I think kind of what you're alluding to is like you love to see when someone gets every single bit of potential out of themselves.
Yeah, that too. Or I mean, potential out of themselves, or like there's a certain way that bike racing is done, and then somebody thinks outside of that box and they end up getting rewarded because of it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, there's numerous examples of it, and it could be equipment related.
That's how aero bars were invented.
Yeah, sure. Like Greg LeMond winning the Tour in, I don't know, the 80s or whatever. I mean, he has aero bars to thank for that. But like he thought outside the box and was like, how do I go faster in this time trial? Yeah, I think it's super cool. I know not everyone agrees with me. Some people just like to always see the strongest person in the race win, but
yeah. And he's also not a World Tour rider. So he might have had a better ability to prepare specifically for that, rather than like, you know, Dowsett can commit a month or two to like specific preparation, but this guy can.
Yeah. Who is this guy?
He rides for, I think he rides for a continental team in the UK, but he works for Ineos.
He works for Ineos as an aerodynamic, like, you know, he's like their aerodynamic expert, and because he had like a track team where they did the same thing. Like none of them are elite. Like he took like a group of non-elite level track cyclists and you know, took them to track World Cups and was like crushing it. Because they thought outside the box and they did things better, whether it was because of aerodynamics or like their tactics in the 4K pursuit or whatever.
That was like when Phelps came out with that left side drivetrain. That was kind of cool.
Yeah, I think they determined that wasn't actually faster.
No, but like it's still like, you know, it's unique. Like they're doing something different.
Yeah. Ashton Lambie was on that team when he broke the 4K pursuit record.
So Swiss Epic.
Yeah, let's talk about a real race. Not this gravel bullshit.
Yeah, so Carson, so tell us, how did the Swiss Epic opportunity come about for you? Because from what I saw, it wasn't something that was on your radar until like pretty last minute.
Yeah, it was very last minute. I had kind of just gotten back from a block of like, like Nationals, Snowshoe World Cup, and I was kind of just going to settle in to some training here in Brevard and enjoy it, and got a couple weeks in, and I was taking Sarah Hill to the airport. She's races for Live Factory, I guess you consider it, Live Factory team. And I was actually taking her to the airport so she could fly the Steamboat. And I was just talking about her calendar and races she had done. And I was like, yeah, you know, Swiss Epic's kind of like one of those bucket list items for me. And she was like, oh, it's funny you say that. I have a friend who like just had his partner had to drop out, and like the race starts Tuesday. And she kind of jokingly was like, if you can get over there by, this was Friday. She's like, if you can get over there by like Sunday, then, you know, like Sunday, Monday, then you could race. It's already like all taken care of anyway. He just needs a partner. And I kind of like shrugged it off. I was like, oh, that's cool. And then like got to thinking about it and talking with the team and some people, and slowly it snowballed, and just like all the pieces came together. There was zero kind of limitations or things that got in the way. It just like sort of happened. And I was like, I guess I'm going to go do this. And I'm not a very last minute guy. Like I like to, you know, if I've got a race planned, I like to have some preparation and the logistics dialed and know what I'm doing before I go. But figured it was a good growing opportunity, and I had no idea who I was meeting, like who I was going to race with all week. I just figured like I'll go over there and get the experience. And, I would love to go back and race it from a UCI standpoint, but I figured this would just be an opportunity to just like go put in mileage and see the event for the first time.
So was this was the partner that you're with? You're saying that you guys weren't racing like in the pro division then?
No, so he was kind of a masters. I guess he would have been in the masters section, or category. But yeah, he was, he's fairly fit. He's done like 3 Cape Epics, but he was, a good bit older than me, and I think he just hasn't raced in a while and wanted to, like, he's had this entry for 2 or 3 years waiting to do it. So I was like, man, I'll go over and do it with you. So yeah, I flew in, met the guy, got on the bikes, got situated, and just like, started racing together. And yeah, we were in the open men, so it took a few days of like the first couple of days, kind of a learning curve to see where he was at, and like where I was at, and we kind of quickly discovered I was a bit more like obviously fit, and I think the biggest I mean, I wasn't there to like push him to his limits. I was just like, I want to assist you and like help us both to like have a good time and get through this as kind of efficiently as possible. So by like the second or third day, we realized it was kind of efficient for me basically to help push him on the steep climbs just to like save some matches. And then I was kind of like pulling I guess a domestique role. Like I would push him kind of on off for like 20 to 40 seconds.
You're talking about pushing him like physically pushing
like
him.
Pushing?
Like physically. So
yeah. That's awesome.
Because like, I mean, I don't know what it is, 60, 61 kilos, and he's like 79, 80 kilos. So
dang,
I would essentially help him save like some matches on all the steep climbs. So I would get up behind him on like the steep bits in the middle of the stage, and like for about 20 seconds on, 40 seconds off, I would essentially like ride next to him, give him an assist, and then like coast back, recover, and then like ride up, push him for 20 seconds. And then, just get on the front and like any flat sections and just like try to shelter him a bit. So,
and you're not a lot of shelter at all.
No, that's the bad thing. So, I mean, it was a really good learning experience. Like, it took a couple days to kind of drop the racer ego and just settle into like an experience mindset, like just there to experience it, get some good training, and enjoy it and help him as much as I could. So after I kind of figured out how to like let go of the racing aspect, yeah, it was a great week, great experience, and some of the most unreal riding, just the way they design the routes and connect towns and villages and use trail systems. And it would be very enticing to go back now and race that with a partner.
So even the pros do it with a partner?
Go ahead, Dylan.
What was that?
Even the pros do it with a partner?
Yeah, so it's the Epic Series races, and you have to have a partner. You have to start with a partner. If something happens and they drop out, then you can race as like an outcast rider is what they call it. So you race individually, and you can't impede the race or like get in the way of leaders and stuff or pull. So, but you have to start with a partner.
What do you think about the partner format? I feel like I have mixed opinions on it.
Yeah, you would. I mean, if you're going for the experience, I could pick a buddy that you get along with super well and is decently fit. Because the biggest thing is like you'll probably butt heads about like if you've got a really good guy, like a guy that's really fit and one that's exceptionally skilled, then it's going to be hard because you're always kind of contradicting each other. But
yeah,
if you're a UCI perspective, yeah, pick someone that you're also good buddies with, of course, but like pretty similarly matched. I think it really brings a unique perspective to these races because like if everyone was starting solo, you would probably see an entirely different race. But
Sure.
when you have to put two people together. And you have to be like, you can't leave them. You have to be within 2 minutes of each other the whole stage, apparently. Yeah, it's interesting. I think like in Cape Epic, we saw it with like Blevins and Matt Beers. I think he was with. It's like both insanely strong, but like Matt versus, Blevins on climbs versus Matt on an open stretch, and how they had to figure out how to work together.
Yeah. I think so. I see how it's cool because you're seeing two racers work together, and you don't typically see that in bike racing. Like even in road racing, when there's a team, you're seeing an individual win the stage, and here you're seeing, two individuals win a stage, a team, and they have to, if one of them has a problem, the other one has to stop, and all of this. Yeah. I think that's cool. I guess from a spectator perspective, like when I've followed the Cape Epic, it seems like the teammate is always holding, one of the teammates is always holding the other rider back. Like, one of the teammates has a bad day, and the other guy's probably strong enough to win the race, but like he can't do anything. Like he's just got to stay there with his teammate. It's kind of a bummer all the way around.
Yeah, but that's how teams work, though. Like, you don't think sure. LeBron sometimes thinks that his teammates are holding him back, man?
Just
sure.
give me the ball.
Sure, but like, I don't know. That's kind of one of the cool things about cycling is that there's team aspects to it, but like in most bike races, one person crosses the line is the winner. It's not like, for example, if it was a road race and one of your teammates was having a bad day and was getting dropped on the first climb, it's like, all right, well, help us tomorrow. Like you're useless. Versus like in these mountain bike races, like the Cape Epic, Swiss Epic, if your teammate's having a bad day, you have to stay with your teammate having a bad day, even if you have the legs to win.
Yeah, and from what I noticed, the Swiss Epic was significantly different than the Cape Epic. Like, I mean, it was just like you'd have like an hour-long climb followed by like a half-hour descent, or some rolling tight single track where I felt like 70 to 80% of the stage was pretty individual anyway. Like you can't sure. really help each other.
Sure.
So
yeah, Cape Epic has a lot more drafting, I guess.
Yeah, Cape was like, you can definitely work together.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think for Swiss or something like that, make sure you and your partner, if you can, at least are like on pretty similar pages. Like the biggest thing I would say is like if you're an amateur trying to go do one of these, like skill for sure. Because like fitness wise, you can kind of push through some of this stuff or just back off a bit. But like I noticed it was interesting being like a UCI pro in the middle of like the amateur field.
Yeah.
So it was a crazy experience getting to see like what those people, what they have to deal with and like what their race is like. And, I can tell you that they're losing the most time like on descents. So, I mean, they would lose 10, 15 minutes on like a 20-minute, 30-minute descent. So like definitely have your skills kind of pretty honed for what you're going to be doing.
So Carson, did knowing that you were going to be going into the race, like racing with someone in the amateur field, did that kind of help make your decision a little bit easier because there wasn't as much pressure with like the preparation and stuff? Like you mentioned that you're usually not a last minute guy and you like to prepare super well for races, but knowing that you weren't going to be, I'm going to say like the weakest link here, and that you were kind of there as like more of a support role, like did that help make your decision easier?
Yeah, definitely. If I was going for UCI, you wanna kind of capitalize on the experience and get what you can out of it. Like you're there for a pretty specific goal. So that took some pressure off. It was kind of like I was actually just able to like enjoy racing and enjoy riding a bike, 5+ hours every day, which was rad. There wasn't the pressure of like, do I carry an extra like a extra pound of this, or do I like stop at that aid station or that one, or do I I went over with like a handful of gels because I didn't even have nutrition like at the moment. So
Nice.
it was just like, I'll get over there and buy some gummy bears and figure it out. So it was really relaxed and like was able to kind of see a different side of those events I don't normally see. Like I'll do fondos or I'll do gravel races and we just, blow past that stuff. And to be able to like stop at aids and interact with people and like help people, and it was kind of cool. So
Yeah.
and now I learn how the whole race works. Like it's a pretty crazy unit of like, it's almost like a mini tour. Like they give you this one bag at the very beginning and it's like whatever you want for the week has to go in this, and they transfer it each day to different places for you. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, that is cool. So I want to hear what you guys' thoughts are on this, but I think it would actually be a pretty cool addition to something like the Lifetime Grand Prix series to add the dimension of like a pro-am race.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Where like everyone in the Grand Prix, mandatory, you come to this event and you get randomly selected and paired with an amateur and you do the same thing.
What?
Yeah. Yeah, it's
What
the
are
same
you talking about? No, dude.
Kind of the same thing.
No.
Yeah.
I thought you meant they have separate pro and amateur races, and you're talking about pairing.
But here's
us
why.
together.
This is how you can make it work. Because part of the allure of the Lifetime Grand Prix events are that they're like mass start, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think Schwamigan maybe is the exception where the pros start separately.
And Sea Otter.
In Sea Otter, yeah. But that's like the allure of all these mass start events. And like
1/3 of the events.
Yeah.
Sure, and also they actually did separate the starts at Leadville and Crusher as well. So
yeah, but you're on the course at the same time. Everyone's on the course. Everyone's on the course at the same time, right? Like the amateurs want to say that they lined up and were on the racing at the same time as the pros. Yep. You could eliminate that chaos from the equation if you did what I'm talking about, where you just had one special event, or maybe even like you separate them after by days or something, and like the next day there's an opportunity to like do the pro-am thing. But like it would be a huge opportunity, I think, like for like support wise and like financial opportunity.
So wait. What exactly are you suggesting right now?
Exactly what Carson just did. Where like he went and did this like 5-day or 6-day stage race, and he was there as the pro supporting the amateur, which I bet for this other guy, I mean, I don't know, Carson, you can tell me, but I bet he was super grateful that like you stepped in and were like there for him to do that. And I'm sure he's like going back and like telling all his buddies over beers, like it was super cool that he like got to ride with Carson for 5 days. Like that seems way cooler than starting a race with, whoever, Payson, McElvin, and never seeing them again. Like what's the point of that even? Like that's not even that cool. Yeah, it'd be way cooler if like Payson rode with an amateur and they were like teammates for a day and had this kind of similar dynamic.
Everyone always talks about how it's all about the mass start. All the amateurs want to start with the pros, right? But has anyone actually asked like an amateur if they care about that? Because I haven't. I've never heard anyone an amateur.
You'll see it at a lot of these events. I mean, like there's people taking selfies and making posts afterwards.
Yeah, but you can do that after or before the race, and you can start separately.
Yeah, but you can't tell your homies back home that you raced against world champion.
Yeah,
but is anybody actually doing that? That's what I'm asking.
I would say yes.
I think you'd be surprised. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say yes.
Also, Adam, I absolutely hate your idea.
I knew Dylan would hate it.
Yeah, I do too, but I want to hear Carson's opinion because he's the one that actually.
Yeah.
No, I think it would get tricky when it came to like its value in the standing, like actually being a part of the series. I think
it's
that can get tricky because like
it's not part of it.
Yeah. Okay.
It in no way whatsoever contributes to like the Lifetime Grand Prix series standings. It's just like
I see it being
the amateurs
like,
just get
race.
amplified experience, in my opinion.
Cool. I think it's cool. I mean, I could see it being like a year-end bonus thing. Like, say you race
Yeah.
Big Sugar, and then they're like, okay, on Sunday, like we're gonna do a pro-am race for fun, and everyone has to do it.
Yeah,
Or you
and
could
maybe
do-
there's 60 slots and there's a bid for each slot. So like, someone pays 30 grand to ride with Payson, but they only pay 3
Holy
grand to ride with
crap.
Dylan because they don't really care about Dylan.
It's not
Dylan would
worth
just-
3 grand.
Right. Dylan would wait for him at the last like 500 meters.
Yeah.
I'll see you at the finish.
Well, that's I was
So
gonna say.
so I feel like what you're describing now is like the tour, like they have the crits after the tour that's like it's all staged. You know what I mean? It's not exactly like that, but like these are not for points. It's just kind of
No,
like
these are just like
fun...
an exhibition races.
Right, sure. Yeah. I mean,
Like if you're truly going to try and cater to the amateur experience by having them intermingle with the pros, have them intermingle with the pros, not just line up and potentially like, cause chaos at the first 5 miles because they can hang for 5 miles. Like, actually do an event that's based around pros and AMs coming together and like riding together.
So here's the problem with that. If you're going to give everyone the pro experience, then nobody has the incentive to get better and get into the pro race, right? Like you're giving the experience to everyone when really only these people deserve the experience.
What people deserve the experience?
The pros deserve the pro experience, right?
Yeah,
You're
but
just like,
it's
oh,
going to
you
be a
can buy
completely
your way
different
into this
experience, though. I mean, we're not talking about, that the amateur is not all of a sudden going to be elevated to the level of the pro. Like, it's
But
actually
you're
the
giving
opposite.
them the same experience.
But the pro is actually, but the pros don't do it for the experience. Like, we're not racing against each other because we want to like race against, some big name or whatever. Like, we're doing it because that's like the highest level of competition.
It's like I don't know. I mean, you see like 3,000 plus people at Grand Fondos because like they want to do George Hincapie's Grand Fondo. So like I could see it being a cool addition to the series. It may bring like more financial and public incentive to it. But yeah, as long as it's just like a separate thing at the end of the year, like a fun, I don't know, you could incentivize it some different ways.
It sounds miserable for both parties to me. The amateurs getting dragged along, and the pros.
No,
just
see,
waiting.
I don't think so. Because like Carson just said, he got to see a unique side of that race that he would normally not have seen. Like he got to see what the amateurs had to like kind of suffer through, and like what the chaos is like in the aid stations when you're like further back in the race. Like you get to see it from a different perspective. So I mean, I don't know. It was just an idea. Lifetime, if you're listening, you can decide.
And add an actual mountain bike race.
Related to pro versus amateur, we actually do have a related listener question to that.
Oh,
I don't know if it's the only listener question we have this week, but let me try to find it. Okay, so this guy says, and I'm not going to say their name in case they don't want their name to be said, but anyway, so they say, I've been racing since 10th grade, but just since last year, I've been getting more serious about racing. How do you guys get sponsors, and are things I need to talk about if I'm trying to go more pro? And do you guys hold full-time jobs now along with racing? If so, how do you balance training and work? And he also says, does Scott even have any sponsorship? Seems like he just does whatever on whatever bike he has lying around. All right, so Scott, you can start.
with the last part or the first part?
I don't know, whatever part you want.
Yeah, I guess I have quote sponsors, but I'm like on a team
Sure.
that has sponsors. Like I don't have to, I'm not like a privateer like Dylan, where you have to like,
Right.
or quote unquote privateer, where you just make your own team that you're the sole member of.
Sure.
So yeah. What was the first part of the question?
Well,
How does it,
he's
he wants
asking,
to go pro?
he's basically asking about I don't know how old he is, but he says he's been racing since 10th grade, and it sounds like he wants to go pro, but he just wants to know how you go about getting sponsors.
Yeah, I mean that's hard to say without knowing what discipline he wants to ride.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I'll say about getting sponsors.
If he wants to do gravel, just tell him to download Instagram.
Well, he messaged me on Instagram.
As many words as possible in the caption. More captions, the better.
he messaged me on Instagram, so he's already got it downloaded.
Oh, okay. All right. Check.
You're in.
So this is what I'll say about getting sponsors. Getting sponsors is kind of like getting a girlfriend, in that if you're not on a team, like Scott's on a team.
You get a girlfriend, or how normal people
No, like how. So this is what I mean. So Scott, this doesn't apply to you, and this doesn't really apply to roadies either, because roadies, I guess it could apply to roadies, but like you just need to find a team, get on a team, and then the team takes care of all the sponsors, right? But if you're a privateer, so to speak, like if you're either a mountain bike racer or a gravel racer in the U.S., I don't know if this guy's from the U.S., but I assume he is. And this may or may not apply to whatever country you're living in, but
could be Lithuania.
No, Latvia, dude.
Oh, Latvia.
We're the fourth highest rated or highest listened
podcast in
sports
Latvia.
podcast in Latvia.
Yeah, killing it there.
Shout out to the Latvia fans. So this is what I mean by it's like getting a girlfriend. So like when you're trying to get a girlfriend, you see a girl that you're interested in, and so you have to be like, hey, you have to like somehow reach out to her and be like, hey, I'm interested in you, and then you have to see if she's like, okay, I'm interested in you. And then you're like, okay, this is what I have to offer. And then she's like, all right, this is what I have to offer. Like, you don't have these conversations, but that's basically what's going on, right? And that's the same thing that happens with sponsorship. You reach out and you're like, hey, I'm interested in you as a sponsor. And then they're like, they either completely ignore you, like a ton of girls will, or they'll respond and they'll say, we're interested as well. Like, what do you need? And then this is what I mean, is that it's like kind of like a dance, right? You can't just be like, oh, I need like $1 million and 30 bikes. Like, here's my address, right? Because then they'll be like, screw this guy. You need like, it's a dance in like, you don't want to tell them that you need too much, but you also don't want to tell them an amount that's so little that like, they're like, oh, what, sure, whatever. Here, have a free helmet. We don't care.
So like you don't want to. It's like comparable to the girlfriend because you don't want to just immediately ask her if she wants like 12 kids or something like that.
Right. Or well, no. It's more like
that's scaring them off, man.
It's more like
exactly. You're scaring the sponsor off by asking him for $1 million.
Yeah. No, dude. It's more like you're on the first date and you're like, hey. Like you've been on the date for 20 minutes and you're like, hey, like, want to come back to my place and hook up? And she's like, dude, I've known you for 20 minutes. Like, no. You know what I'm saying?
I think the first step, though, or one of the first steps after you reach out is establish your, like, value to them, like how, because the sponsor's looking basically to, like, expand their reach. Mm-hmm. So establish, like, kind of what makes you unique or what you think you can provide to them to help expand their brand. So, like, whether that's a region or a discipline or a mix of both, like, hey, I'm a Southeast native, like, we have a lot of kids or whatever, people down here that are interested in this type of riding, and, like, I think I can be a great spokesperson for that, and, provide your value or whatever it is that you can kind of assist or bring that's unique is a big part.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, more and more companies are caring less and less about your results. Yeah. For some people, that may be a good thing. For some people, that may be a bad thing. But it's just the reality of the situation.
Results are good. They're like a secondary. It's like if at first you're approachable and able to like be a positive influence to whatever cycling community you have, and results are kind of like a cherry on the top.
Yeah. I mean, I know like some of my personal sponsors have said that, you know, they've sponsored continental level pro road teams in the past, and that, you know, they have to give these teams so much product and give them a certain amount of money. And it's like, if they just invest that time and money into a single person that's like really, I don't know, killing it on YouTube, for example, or whatever, or Instagram, or somebody who's like a personality in the space of cycling, they get way more return on investment. So it's kind of like a long way of saying that companies care a lot about social media. And again, it's like, you know, that's a good thing for some people and it's a bad thing for some people. It's like going back to like Jeff Kabush's article about how racers have to be influencers nowadays. You know, I sort of like, I am an influencer, and there were a lot of things about that article that I agreed with. It's like, it does kind of suck that like, if all you want to do is race your bike fast and you are a fast bike racer, that you also have to do this second job that you may or may not even be interested in.
Yeah, and I would say it seems like, you know, now with the rise of gravel and like grassroots events and stuff, there is a little bit more emphasis on like personal interactions too. It's not like just YouTube, not just Instagram. Like, if you can be really involved with like your local community, and like maybe if you're like a mountain biker, you're involved with like the trail building association or something like that. Like, that seems to hold some weight too. You know, more so than like just hiding in your room, doing Instagram or TikTok, and then like going and racing bikes. Like, if you can get out in the community, and I think like cycling is so weird as far as like sponsorship and stuff goes. Like, everything, it seems like almost all pro athletes in cycling first seek endemic sponsorship. So like, you know, bike brands or component brands, or, you know, companies that are within the industry. And there's not as much of like non-endemic sponsorship that's going on. But like, you know, Al's Hardware down the street, if they see that you're like a really hardworking kid and like you're really invested in the community, like they might throw you like some kind of, you know, financial sponsorship. Like, sure, they're not going to be able to give you a bike, but maybe they can help support getting you to some races. You know, things like that. Like, if you can think a little bit outside the box, that can go a long ways too, versus like just trying to reach out to, you know, Trek Bikes. Like, you know, they get 1,500 emails about sponsorships a day. Like, you know, it's going to be a lot harder to get in with something like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Scott, you look over this conversation. You're just like, whatever. Sign me for a team and let me race my bike.
Scott, one day you're gonna have to be a gravel pro, man.
Dude, you're at least 8 years from retiring.
And by retiring, you mean becoming a gravel pro?
Exactly.
Yeah.
When I realize I'm not good enough for what I want to do, I just do this just to make a paycheck.
Keep the dream alive.
Hopefully by the time you have to be a gravel pro, this podcast will have blown up and you can just tell your sponsors that you got a really successful podcast.
Yeah, maybe. Oh, gravel will be dead by then anyways. It's the beginning of the end.
It'll be on to the next thing.
Dude, did we talk about how they canceled the live stream?
Well,
I mean,
we gotta save that. This one's getting pretty long. We don't want to keep Carson waiting too long.
We didn't actually even talk about the thing that we wanted to talk to Carson about, which is like how gravel is destroying mountain and road races. We can talk about that on another episode. It's like a whole separate conversation.
Part 2.
Sure.
We wasted way too much time talking about like feed zones again.
I know, man.
Classic gravels. Pro.
Classic. Feed zone and aero bars.
I don't think we've had a
controversy.
Somebody fact check me. I don't think we've had a single episode where Dylan hasn't talked about aero bars at some point.
What about the episode that I missed?
Did you miss an episode?
Did I? I don't know.
I don't think you've missed one of these episodes.
Okay. Yeah. I miss the Matchbox episodes all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we've probably mentioned aero bars every single episode.
That's going to turn into like the Bonk Bros drinking game. Every time Dylan says aero bars, you got to take a drink.
Right.
Of electrolytes.
Have we had an episode where we didn't talk about anything gravel related?
No, of course not.
Yeah.
There's always something to make fun of with gravel.
Oh, for sure.
All right, cool. Well, let's wrap this up.
Okay.
Now we're dragging it on.
Yeah.
Thanks, Carson. Hopefully we'll have you on again. This was awesome, man.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's been fun.
All right, see ya.